Hey, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. My name's Rod Hutchings, and I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and it's just at midnight here in Australia. All right, so today we've got a great panels about the virtual workplace, optimizing remote work with cutting edge tools. And there's just in this era where remote work's really transitioned from a perk to being necessary, everybody's doing it. It's really critical that we leverage technology more than ever. So today we'll delve into that, and I'm really looking forward to that. So without further ado, can we bring forward the panelists, please? Hello. And what a great group of panelists we've got today. And to get us started, we'll just go around our little virtual room, and I'll get the panelists to introduce themselves and tell us what fascinates them about this topic. And we'll start with Tracy. Hi, Tracy.
Hey everyone, I'm Tracy Brower. I'm the Vice President of Workplace Insights for Steelcase. My PhD is in the sociology of work, how we affect our work, how it affects us. I'm a senior contributor for Forbes and Fast Company, and I've written a few books. The most recent is called The Secrets to Happiness at Work. And I think this is so especially interesting because of the new landscape of work and the criticality of the tools and the ways that we connect. So looking forward to our conversation, you all.
Thank you, Tracy. And hello, Alex.
Kia ora, everyone. I'm in New Zealand, so just a couple of hours ahead of Rod. Lovely to be here. I think this topic is really fascinating to me, and insofar as what I do is I'm a consultant in my group. I do fractional HR work, but also advisory work across boards. And this is really topical in New Zealand at the moment, and how to manage productivity, and particularly in the workplace that is virtual or remote. And down here in New Zealand, that's exceptionally important for us because we don't have a great talent pool in terms of large or volume. We've got fabulous people, but now this is more important than ever to make sure we can leverage globally. So I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. And Nicole.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Jones. I'm based in the United States. Currently, I'm in Jamaica, so hopefully my connection is sustainable, concluding a vacation. I've been in the HR space almost 25 years and have worked for a variety of companies with hybrid as well as remote environments since probably 2006. Being familiar with the space, also as the landscape is changing, I think this is a very important topic to delve in as we have experts here to provide guidance on how to navigate and use cutting edge tools.
Thank you. And last but not least.
Hi. It's really a bit awkward to be a panelist because I'm usually like a moderator on these panels. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Hi, this is Mine. I'm joining from Istanbul, Turkey, and I am running a company named Happy Work Studio, where I'm helping companies and individuals to transition to remote work and improve the way that they do work. And I think it's just like really important that they are using the tools in a way that's accelerating and augmenting what they are doing rather than putting extra pressure and work on people. So this is really something that's really dear to my heart, and I'm looking forward to discussing more about this on our panel.
Excellent, and welcome. And just actually conducting this panel in itself is a very clearly quite a remote activity, isn't it? And it's a great example of the power of the technology. All right, so to get us started, I'm going to come to Alex first, and to set the stage, and just Alex, just share your thoughts. And you probably already started already, particularly the New Zealand element to it, is how prevalent remote work in today's business environment. Can you just provide us, some insights into the scale of the shift, and I'm just really curious of, how's it changed with the whole COVID and now post-COVID, there's just things are still moving, I think.
Yeah, I think for us down here in New Zealand, sort of watching this trend globally, there's the same remote or working from home and flexibility. There's different ways that people are talking about not being in the office, and from a prevalence perspective, it's certainly right up the top of every single list when we look at data that's collected through our universities and studies, that this is important to people and important to talent as well. From an employer side, which I think will be really interesting to see how these two meet, it is absolutely critical for us. There's only probably about 2.5 million people to draw upon in our workforce down in here in New Zealand. So those employers that decide to force people back to work, insofar as coming out of a remote situation, are not probably going to gain the same sort of leverage as an employer that doesn't. But you can see that around the world. You know, I think it was at Amazon, that's 5 days a week. There's lots of companies that are starting to ask for people back to work into the office. And I think that's what I'm really excited to talk about, what other people are seeing. But certainly from the opportunity of remote work, this is, I think, quite untapped. COVID forced us there, but I don't think we got there in the best way possible. So I think we've got a really good opportunity to make sure that we do things really well through our leadership. Yeah,
I would say hybrid is definitely here to stay. You know, like if you look, there's some really interesting research by the University of Chicago and Stanford, and they looked at remote work has been increasing since like decades ago, but the pandemic accelerated it and has made it the norm increasingly. So absolutely believe that hybrid is here to stay for many, many companies, and obviously for jobs where it lends itself to remote work. The other thing that's really cool, we have research that suggests that we're kind of hitting an equilibrium globally. Like if you ask leaders, they're really, really happy for people to be in the office 3 days a week. And if you ask employees, they're pretty happy to be in the office 3 days a week. So it's sort of like we're hitting this like equilibrium, because there's been so much debate in the popular press about where should we meet. And it's really a both and, right? Like we love our Mondays and Fridays with our, not having to put on our button pants, right? Or not having to make our commute. But we want days in the office as well to connect, to get kind of that energy from other people. And I think the key is that we are creating the conditions for people to want to be in the office, even if they don't want to be in the office 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So I think we've got a wonderful opportunity in front of us.
Yeah, some great points there, Tracy. And I think, like, from my personal experience, is that I spent a lot of time working in the IT industry, and for so long prior to even COVID, a lot of our teams were certainly quite remote, and so often I'd go into work, in Melbourne, Australia, and in fact my team was all over Australia, and sometimes I had team members that were in other countries as well. So actually going into work, I might go into work by myself. So it's quite the way that teams form, I think, is quite different, and a lot for the reasons that Alex, I think you were talking about, just finding the right skills. Where are they? You need them. All right. So, Minnie, have you got anything to add on this one about how prevalent it is? What's it like from where you are? So you're from somewhere different than myself.
So I am working with companies from diverse backgrounds. And the only thing that's common is that they believe that this is like a wave, and that they can just surf the wave, and it's going to, end soon. And even these, big companies asking people back, they're just putting that as a reason to call people back. But what they forget, and just as Tracy was saying, this has been on for decades, and this is here to stay. So this is not only about calling people back to work, or just creating this word around the office or not office, but this is all about how we work. It's not like where we work. I really hate to let's have the conversation only around the location and the place. This is about the structure. This is about, how we are doing things. Even the fully remote companies now, they're not doing it the right way. So it's about like how to do it right. I think the conversation has to focus on rather on to how to communicate better, how to have less burnout, how to be more productive. And when we say more productive, it's not like working longer hours or more, but like working less, but doing more. So, I mean, we need to be talking about this rather than are we going back to the office or not? And that's why, like, we keep hearing the buzzwords like the hybrid, async, and everything. And we keep seeing the news because it's popular and hype. But this is just like, I think, making us overlook the fact that we are just not there yet. This is just the beginning. And this is, I like to call it the teenager blues, because people now are learning to be adults at the workplace, because they were like being told what to do, when to do what, and how to do. But now they have to take the responsibility and be an adult at the workplace too. So this is like the transition blues to teenager blues, and we'll get there in time.
Well, I like your points, just really about what's the goal and intention about this remote work. Nicole, have you got any thoughts on this? How prevalent is it for you in your part of the world and the work that you do?
So definitely I would concur with the points that have been brought forth. This is an ever evolving topic. Of course, the pandemic shifted a lot of things, and I feel like it accelerated remote work. And, to some of the earlier points, you now have a lot of the major companies that are doing a recall and having everyone in office. I think there was even one company recently where they hired a new CEO, and he was allowed to basically work remote, but the employees had been called back to the office. And so a lot of people call that out to show how unfair that is. So if the CEO of the company could do remote work, why is it required that we come back to the office? So I think this is definitely a hot and burning topic. And again, you have to meet employees where they're at. And if they choose not to come back to the office, there's other companies that will allow them to do remote work, because again, it's going to be based on a lot of personal circumstances. Some people thrive better in in-person situations versus remote situations, or even personal dynamics, whether or not you're caregiving or have a lot of obligations around the home, which remote work allowed you to have a little bit more of that flexibility to take care of the home, as well as be able to have a sustainable income in working remote.
Thanks, Nicole. Yep. Yeah, that's quite fascinating. The CEO at home and expecting everyone else to be in the office. I can imagine that would raise some eyebrows. All right. So I guess we've set the stage. We've spoken about the prevalence of remote work. And so this panel is really then about around tools. So I'll come to Tracy on this question to get us going, really about goals, intentions. What's the primary goals of organizations aim to achieve with remote working tools? So what do we invest in? Why do we invest in it? What are we trying to do? And over to you, Tracy. Thank you.
It's such a important question. And I think the key word in your question is tools. Like, what are the goal? What is the organization trying to achieve with these tools? Like, in general, organizations want performance and connection and collaboration and efficiency and purpose, right? But if we think about the tools, I was actually giving some deep thought to this because I just think it's a question we don't often think about. I think we need tools that help us connect and meet. I think we need tools that help us collaborate, which is different than connecting and meeting, right? We're doing generative collaboration. We need tools that help us communicate. So you think about like Grammarly or a tool like that helps us communicate effectively. I think we need tools that help us catalog and collect, right? So like a Basecamp would be an example of that. we need tools that help us prioritize or inquire. So you think about like Slido, right? And we need tools that help us amplify. So StreamYard is a great example, right? We're amplifying our message today. And I think we need tools that help us learn. So those are some of the categories that come to mind. I'm sure there are others, right? But there's so many different ways that we can do that, right? Like Teams helps us meet, and it can help us with polling and prioritizing, right? And getting input. We can think about tools like Zoom that help us connect and also have whiteboard capabilities so we can collaborate together. So I think it's just really interesting to think about what are kind of those higher order things that we're trying to do, and then what are the tools? There's lots of them. What are the tools that help us get those things done, which I know we'll dig into.
Yeah, you've covered a lot of ground there, and yeah, absolutely right, isn't it? It's more than just about being able to connect with one another. It's then how do you build on top of that? Alex, you got any thoughts to add on to Tracy's intro?
I think the all the technology, there is all the technology. I think the trick with the tools is the consistency and landing on a few, and that's where, I mean, certainly in my experience, everyone went crazy and downloading apps and sort of half of it and not understanding what the tools could do. And I think Tracy really landed the point on learning. You know, how are people going to learn to collaborate again in a different way also? So that and I think that we can't underestimate us having to learn in a different way, really being, I mean, I'd call it being over the top in a good way, of making sure that you are learning as a facilitator, for example, you know, pointing out, making sure that inclusivity is a common thread, that everybody gets a voice, because if those tools are absolutely leveraged well in terms of the way that a person is in charge of them, insofar as a participant and as a facilitator, that makes all the difference. And I think there is a lot of research that there are, you know, neurodiversity, etc., that people had felt that they were far more included online. So it's making sure that there is somebody that's responsible for that overall team health as well, and making sure that the tools are leveraged really well.
Yeah, I love what you talk about consistency. One thing that I think I struggle with, you know, even today, and many organizations struggle with, is that, are we all using the same, for example, same messaging platform? There's so many ways. You can Skype, you can WhatsApp, you know, where is the team? Where do you find them? Where are all the messages? Like, that's just one example of, if you're using disparate tools, you mightn't meet, you mightn't see all the messages. You mightn't be up to date. You might be working in best as a team. So that's just, again, one example of one tool. So it's really key, I think, getting that consistency. Nicole, have you got any thing to add on to this one?
Yes, I definitely think tools that drive efficiency, which many of these tools drive efficiency. At the end of the day, companies want to have return on investment and see profitability. So in tools that drive efficiency and how you're able to collaborate, if you're still able to get those innovative ideas across the threshold and the finish line, those are things that come in. Of course, since the pandemic, we've seen a uptick of tools like StreamYard and Zoom and Teams, and how you leverage those. Importantly, it's also great for employees to know how to use those tools. I know a lot of times, if you're like me, you get things, whether or not it's a new iPhone or a new iPad, and you might not even know how to use everything on it. And then somebody teaches you something. Well, do you know you can leverage this way or that way? And so you're able to get those extra advantages out of it if you know how to use the tools.
Yeah, no, that's really true, isn't it? It's really, how do we optimize is really, really important. And Minnie, what are your thoughts?
Well, I am just really not big fans of tools when I'm working with companies. They're
Mhm.
usually like asking me, which tools are you recommending us to use? And then I tell them, okay, let's do an audit first. Like, what do you need? What do you have? And what do you need? And do like a gap analysis. Because like usually people think that the tools are magic sticks and it's going to just like, change everything for good, and which doesn't happen all the time. So my perspective on tools is, yes, it's important, and as long as they need it. And not
Mm.
every tool is like, one size fits all. Is not going to work for all the companies. So you need to understand and know what's working for you, what's in line with your culture, what your like, existing processes are, and what are those things that are going to help you augment and make things like easier for your people. And like, I think it was 2 weeks ago when we were having another webinar, one of our panelists told me that in their company there are 200 tools. Can you imagine? 200 different digital tools that they are using every day. This is insane. And probably they're not being put into good use. So that's
Mm.
why I think the first thing that a company needs to do is just like, have an audit. Like, what do we have?
Mm.
Like, what are the tools that we already have? And what are the things that we need to be improved? And usually when I start a project with the companies, they just like, don't even realize that they have some of the tools that they have been just in their portfolio, that
Mm.
they would not even been using them. Or if they knew that they had that tool, they didn't know how to use it. So what I ask them to do is, one, to make sure that those tools are still functional and like helping their business, and two, create tutorials. Usually the video tutorials are the best because people's attention span is really low. They don't want to read long documents. So it's always better to use these visuals or like tutorials, like, some documents where they can just like briefly see how and what that they can do with those tools. So just to wrap it up, I think it's just like, one, to do the audit, two, make an analysis, and three, if you need more, to just like purchase more.
Mm. No, again, I think we're a bit on theme here. That yeah, it's really, you don't need more and more tools. That actually makes it harder. So I think you're 100% right. Like, really need to choose the tools need to be standard, consistent, and having too many, you can't be a master of them all, and people mightn't find them to be most effective. And being most effective does take all those other elements I think you spoke about. But we're talking about tools in this panel, so I'm going to keep talking about tools for a bit more, and this time we're going to talk about how do we optimize. So we've worked out the best tools. What are the best tools? The few tools that we're going to do. How do we optimize that? So, and I'll come to Nicole on this question. So, just based on your experience, just what tools, platforms have been most effective for optimizing remote work in your experience, and can you share some specific examples and why that is, why you think they stand out and are important? So,
Okay.
Nicole, over to you.
So working in the HR space and working for a lot of organizations, each time I go to a new organization, it seems like we're going through an HR transformation and really optimizing the HR space with moving from like an email box to having like these centers of excellence. In that, there's of course frequently asked questions that employees have, and ways to best optimize that include chat boxes, because again, these are frequent questions that employees are coming up with. And then, of course, with the emergence of a lot of AI tools, how you can integrate that from a tone perspective, providing formulated answers back. That is, something else that I've seen. Personally, I leverage Canva. Canva has exploded. I've been using Canva probably since 2015, 2016. And so even with that, If there's something I don't have, like in my toolkit, I go and do something in Canva. Recently, I did a voiceover and showed it to one of my coworkers, and they were like, wow, this was like done in Canva. So there's a lot of tools out there that can provide an effective work experience. It can be innovative. It makes it look professional. And I always believe in, working smart and not hard. And so how can you leverage the tools that make sense and get the work done?
Yeah, Canva is a pretty great tool. And again, it's a cloud-based tool that means it can be anywhere, can it? So that's a really good example. Tracy, what about yourself? What have you found most effective?
Yeah, I feel like there's so many that are really, really good. I'm a really big fan of Zoom because I think it's so seamless. When I present on Zoom, it's seamless to go to polls, and then it's seamless to look at the chat, and it's seamless to come back, and you can, still see people when you're presenting your slides. So I think it's all about kind of that user interface and what your priorities are as a presenter, as a meeting participant, as a collaborator, whatever. I think I love a couple of the points that have been made about, like, probably, I think there's a Goldilocks rule on tools, right? Like, more is not more. More is just overwhelming. So I think you said, Alex, like, you got to land on a few that are going to meet your needs the best. And Minnie, the idea that we want to land on the tools that are going to meet our needs. The other thing that I think is fascinating, and Rod, you were mentioning this actually, is like, what are people's personal preferences, which I think is one of the hardest things. Like, some coworkers love text and it works really well to, interact with them by text. And others are like, no way, that feels really intrusive. Don't text me. And so I feel like another key to success, in addition to choosing the right ones, landing on the vital few, is establishing some protocols that are maybe team-based protocols, right? Like, is it okay to text each other? Is it okay to send an email after hours? Because I know that you're going to manage your schedule and read it when it's right for you, and not just because you received it. Those protocols in terms of behaviors, right? It's not just the tool, it's the behavior and the culture that we're trying to be in the midst of as well.
Hey, that's a great point around the culture, and is it okay to send messages? Like in Australia, they've actually introduced a law just recently that it's actually not okay to there's no obligation on an employee to open a message for work out of hours, and it's like it's against the law to do it. So they've gone to the next level about that. Yeah. And what about you, Alex?
Yeah, I think, and that's absolutely fascinating. Probably a whole new panel on rules and protocols, because it is important. I think whether there's a law or not is, if you're paid and you're contracted to be paid to do work between certain hours, then people should be respectful of that, just as a general all-round rule. But all I was going to add to that was one of the issues that I think that I've confronted is making sure that if you have sort of one tool, whether it be Google or you're landing on Gmail, then it's probably helpful to carry on all the technology that sits with that particular suite. So whether it's Google, Google Zoom, I'm with you all the way, Tracy. I think Zoom has got some fabulous and also remote, on your mobile, it comes across really well as well. But whether it be Google or Teams, and the Microsoft suite, and why I'm pointing that out is that once you've got the suite, you can collaborate all the other technology that surrounds the meeting technology. So if you take Microsoft, for example, you can add an app of Jira, your planner. You can add whiteboard, and notes. So you're almost really effective. And I think it was Nicole was talking about being effective and working efficiently. That if you capture everything into one meeting, then it's able to be referred back to, and it's all in the one place, as opposed to taking notes. Everybody's got their own way, then going on to email, etc. You're sort of capturing those moments really, really succinctly. So if someone's missed it because of a time zone problem, which is totally fine, then they can go and recap and add to the conversation. But also B, if you've forgotten something, or you want to build, or you're doing a collaborative piece of work that goes over a period of time, capturing it and all the data capture in one place is really, really helpful. And I know it sounds really obvious, but it's not done very well. So, I think that if there was one tip that I would say around the tools, it's land on a product and sort of stick to that product.
Yeah, no, I think we're all agreeing and nodding on that one. Stick with the product. And I think the point you make about there are so many tools now that you can come in later. So where you've got this global team, and there's been a meeting, if there's some sort of board that's been up, you can just come and join in. And Tracy, you've got some more to add.
Sorry, I just have one other thought to add, building on what everybody's been talking about. I think another element of tools that we haven't talked very much about is just the tools that help us to connect when some of us are in the office, in the room, and others of us are remote. So, like, we've got a partnership with Microsoft, a partnership with Logitech, and there's a lot to do with like how the room is set up, and the camera angles, and the lighting, and even the colors of the walls, so you don't look like you're sick during the meeting, right? But I think those make such a huge difference, because if we design it well, we can have more presence equity. Because I think the challenge is, if there's some people in the room and some people not in the room, the people in the room have all the advantages, right? They can have the side conversations, they can eat their chips, which messes up the people on, speakerphone. They can see the display in the room, which other people in the room can't always see as well. So I feel like we have to also think about presence equity and how we use setups where we're not all remote, like in this situation, we're not all in the room. That hybrid is often the hardest one. So camera angles and kind of how we are able to see people's expressions and zoom in on them when they're talking, and be able to capture a whiteboard display that's happening in the room and then is shared virtually. I think it's worth mentioning that those elements also make for inclusivity and cultures where people feel respected, and cultures where people, feel like their contribution is valued, and tech and tools can help send those messages.
Yeah, I love that word of presence equity. I really learned during COVID. I was working for IBM, and so a lot of our teams were all around the world, and I just experienced always working in the office, and then and really hadn't thought about this presence equity type issue. But I did notice that when we were in lockdown and everybody was remote, that it was actually, I noticed really I got more input from people who were remote, who are normally remote from my point of view. They had a better opportunity to really contribute, and that really was a standout for me. So it's certainly top of mind. I think exactly what you're talking about is how do you actually bring in the richness of what everyone's got to share when you're meeting together. It's a really great point. Thanks for bringing that up, Tracy. All right, now I'm fascinated back to what Minnie was talking about going into organizations and helping them work out what it is that's most important to them. So I might ask her to elaborate more on that. And also there was just a question in the chat just about when doing it, how do you work out? So over to you, Minnie.
Okay, so what we do is, first I ask them to just strategize, like what is their goal, and at the company level, and then just break it down to the department level. So what are our like goals? What are our main strategies? So to make sure that everything that we use are in line with that strategy and that goal, so that we take that as the base, so that whatever is just like needed, or whatever that they are doing through the audit is based on that strategy. And what we do is I like to call it and we do this with time management and task management as well. What we do is we do like an audit for a week or two, because usually when we are doing this, we have project groups with full representation of departments, and then I ask them to do like a work for a week and just like name everything, all the tools that they are using throughout the week, and just like look at the ones that they need more or that is not really working. So it's just like add, keep, or cancel. And so like so that we know that what's needed more or what's not needed anymore, or what needs to be pivoted or just like be added. So this is how we take things. And what was the second question from the audience?
It's just about identifying essential versus non-essential, like as you
Okay.
triage through that. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, that's like, the essential ones are the ones that are like helping them put the some extra work off their shoulder and just like, improve the process or just save them time. And the ones that are not essential are the ones that are just like, making them put extra effort. So, because like usually like people, that's the reason why people are not using tools, because sometimes we buy the tools to make things better, but at the end of the day people just like find it more like kind of like challenging or like more time consuming than doing it the other way around. So it really needs to put either the extra work off their shoulder or improve the process or save them time. Otherwise it's not essential.
Yep. Thanks. Who'd like to add on to anyone else got experience going into organizations and just helping them work out this?
I can comment, Rod.
Yes.
So I would definitely say, looking at the overall scope and value of the tool, how's the tool being leveraged? How many people are using it? Is it a small subset of the organization, or is it across the organization? I think budgets are always going to be a point of concern. So what is the actual budget? And are you getting, for lack of a better term, a return on investment for the value of the tool? How much is it costing? And then what is the impact? And then I think you have to, just look at it from a holistic perspective, look at it from a comprehensive standpoint, and decide which tools are being leveraged more than others, and then make that determination, for that particular group or across the company.
Thanks, Nicole. Tracy, what have you got to add?
Yeah, I think I love the criteria that, and such a great point on ROI as well, Nicole. And I love the criteria you were sharing, Mini. Another thing that I think is a really good one in terms of criteria is thinking about friction. Like, in what ways do tools add friction to the day versus remove friction? And interestingly, like sometimes you want more friction, right? Like maybe you want more friction in your expense report processing because you want to make sure that you've got all the receipts and the rules are followed and all that. You want higher friction. But when people walk into a meeting room and they have a hybrid participant, you want to be able to connect immediately. So I think that like more friction, less friction is a really good choice as well. Like Mural, for example, right? You can be part of that collaborative tool even if you're not a member. So you don't have to go and sign in 8 different ways with 12 levels of authentication. And so it's less friction in terms of how you're able to collaborate using that tool. So that friction point is just one other idea in terms of criteria.
Thanks, Tracy. Alex, you got anything to add to this one?
Sorry, you'd think we'd know, like what a funny one. I couldn't find the mute, not mute. No, I think they're all really good points, and I think I really like hearing about the work that in terms of the audit. It's a really nice way of putting some legitimacy to what is a new way of working. Really like that.
No, I think absolutely, and really going in there with what's the purpose, and let's just really be aligned about that. Let's have intent to maximize. All right, we might move on. Now, one thing that's like certainly in my industry, like I work for the Air Force, Department of Defense, and so security with the types of work that that we do is really important. But it's important for most organisations as well. And with the rise of remote work, cybersecurity, or just again, it can just be about the presence where you are, is a real growing concern. Like, someone could be at a cafe doing work. Is that good? Don't know. So I'm just wondering if anyone wants to share about how companies should address the security elements, and they could be physical or the tool based, when selecting and using remote tools and setting up remote work policies. What are some of your experiences in your industries? Who'd like to start us off with this question?
I can kick us off if you like. I think there's some work that needs to be done pre the tools, which is around your interaction, the employee's understanding of security and safety around data. And one of the parts that when I was in banking, in the banking industry, and the old clean desk policy, you wouldn't leave a horrible document sitting there, a confidential document on the desk, and walk away, or leave your, not put your screen saver on when you walked away to get a coffee at work. Same sort of rules apply, but putting it into a remote context. So please don't leave it on your desk. At home where anyone could read it, kitchen table type of problem. So it's all coming through from that, but then also looking at how, what Wi-Fi are you connecting to, and public Wi-Fi access. But it's teaching and educating people about the pitfalls of that type of behavior, of making sure that these rules still apply around data security. And, how would you like it if your personal credit card details were sitting on someone's kitchen table? Probably not that, you wouldn't be that excited about it. So it's then all the way through to actually having good and robust systems that protect all the walls going in and out of the office. And I know that that's hard. And I know that people, I know that we inadvertently, one part through COVID, as trying to tackle this problem, shut down everybody's access to be able to do their shopping online, shopping as in groceries online, which is not necessarily unreasonable if you're at home in a work environment, that you're locked in at home, that you'd order your groceries at a point in time during the day. But it's so a couple of those blips, and just helping people understand what you're trying to do and why is really key.
No, that's so true. And I guess you can be anywhere too. So like I said, like if you're in a cafe, you can easily be overheard when you're having a meeting like we are now. Maybe your competitor sitting next to you and you don't know that. So it's so easy to record conversations that these days as well. Who else would like to add on from your experiences? And I think one of the points I think you're making, it's actually not always about the tool either. It's about the policies, isn't it? About what you can do, where you can do it. It's actually probably a pretty key thing, and what information can go into what systems is probably another element to it as well. With all these cloud-based tools, whether it's Canva that was shared before, it might be depending on the industry. Again, you're not going to want to put banking details of someone probably in Canva, as an example. Who else would like to add to this little dimension?
I was going to say, in the past, what I've seen work well is that great partnership with IT. I don't know all of the IT speak, but what has worked well when I'm onboarding a new vendor or, even considering a vendor for a new work tool is actually having a meeting of minds with the vendor and IT so that I'm not having to pass those messages third party perspective.
I'm not sure if it's my technology or yours.
I think it might be Nicole's
Yeah, I think it's
technology.
Nicole's. I think we'll move on to another question, and which is totally different. And a topic that's important to me is just well-being, employee well-being. So I'm just wondering, how can we just be leveraging remote work tools to support employee well-being and work-life balance? Like, if we can dive into that sort of perspective. Who'd like to give that one a go?
Let me go with that.
Yes.
So, like well-being, when it comes to well-being, I'm just like, the great believer in tools and well-being, because like without any exception, without like, I think it's geography agnostic as well, like everyone's burned out. And because this is like being on all the time and like not using it again in the right way. So like Slack can be a tool that can increase your productivity and improve communication, or it could be something that could just like be burning you out. So it's all about how to do it right, how to use those tools right. And that includes how to manage it. Like there's this discussion that when should you be at what time you should be sending messages, or at what time you should just like not send messages. Well, it's up to you. It's on the receiver, not the sender. The responsibility is on the receiver, so you have to take that responsibility to put your notifications off, because that's doable. You can just like limit that, as long as you know that you have the psychological safety, that you don't need to get back to whenever you receive a message or a request. So I think that's really important to know how to manage, because we get distracted with so many tools, with so many notifications. I strongly advise that people put their notifications off all the time if it's not something urgent, or you can even make it on the settings, like when it's a direct mention, just give me a notification, or when it's just like a group message, give me a notification, or like have digests during the day. So just like using those functionalities is really important. And also using tools to just AI. I'm using an AI tool. We develop our own AI mentor as Remote First Institute. We have a productivity assistant where it shows you can integrate your calendar. It shows you like how good you're using your time, like how much time you spend in meetings, or is it really needed, how much time you're taking off. It's really important when people start working remotely, they just don't use that time to either take a break or even have lunch. So what I tell people is, like, by simply creating those slots on your calendar, just put those breaks, intentional breaks, just like force yourself to take those breaks. Otherwise the day is going to pass without taking any breaks, without even drinking a water. So using those little tools, those like really simple tools to remind you to take a break, to have a meal, to maybe interact with people. People usually complain about not socializing, but you have to be intentional. At remote work is on you. The responsibility is on you. You have to just like make those intentional interventions. And using these tools is going to improve that and help you with planning your day.
You make lots of good points there, and I think lots of points that maybe, and I come from both a technology, like I said, I work for IBM, and then the HR perspective as well, that sometimes the technology teams implementing tools don't think about these things as well. So when you're working out your training and those other elements, that I'm just curious on, maybe someone else can add on to this, is what's really, like, I mean, on the panel we'll probably have lots of HR type professionals. What's really HR's role, as we're rolling out tools? What's their role to help set the stage for this, to help ensure we're looking after employee well-being, and that's actually something that the organization's intentionally considering in its scope to think about and to educate about? Because I'm not sure it happens, hasn't always happened that well in my experience. So anyone else want to add on to that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think I love the way you phrased that. What's that HR role? And it seems like a really big value that HR can provide, that we all can provide, is how do we make sure that the tools are aligned with the culture? And sometimes it's simple things. Like, I know of organizations where the default calendar setting for a meeting is 45 minutes or 55 minutes. And you have to physically change that default every time you set up a meeting if you want it to be more than that. So you build in that buffer between meetings. Or, organizations who suggest that you schedule delivery of messages at the time when people are working. I think HR can also be instrumental in helping to initiate team conversations where we're talking about our protocols, where we're talking about our values and how our values are manifest in the protocols for the meeting, the protocols for how the teams get along, all of that kind of thing. And I think it's also helpful if HR can help to reinforce the values. Like, I love Mine's point that, like, everybody has their responsibility for this. Like, leaders are not responsible for, HR is not responsible for other people's well-being. That's a responsibility we all hold for ourselves. But we do have a responsibility to create the conditions for well-being. And so I think we can, as HR professionals, clarify that and be very clear about roles and responsibilities and expectations, so that we are creating cultures where people feel like they've got not just the right security measures or the right clarity on how they're using their tools and their roles, but also they have cultural permission to set appropriate boundaries or turn off notifications, that kind of thing. So I think those are a few ways that HR can really play a very important role.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. I think, you're absolutely right on that. Alex, you can add on to this little topic?
Yeah, a lot of it can also stem back to leadership training, and HR can really lean in on there's always that debate that we have around what's management training, so running a team tactically and sort of terms and conditions type running, and then leadership as well. But you can't do leadership without running a team properly, really. And I don't think anybody tells you the stuff like sit down and talk to your team about what the protocols are, but it's got to come from the top as well. And I know in a couple of different organizations where these that I've worked in, that a couple of these conversations have come up, where the CEO, by virtue of their role, is on 24/7. They shouldn't be, but they are. And then that happens and it flows downhill. So they're showing up with this conduct that they're talking about. I don't expect you to answer my email when I send it because it's suitable for me to send it at 11 p.m. But they've forgotten about their positional power, which is someone starts to think, oh, hang on, why are they sending me this at 11 p.m.? I should respond, and so on and so on. So it's making sure that everybody's demonstrably acting in the way they say, and that is trickier than it sounds. But it is around, and I think, Mine, you're talking about psychologically safe, and we've talked about culture, but it's making sure that we do have those boundaries set down really, really clearly, because flexible working, which could be helpful for people who want to drop off kids, for example, at 3 p.m. and at 9 a.m., well, they're missing 2 hours of the day that the rest of the organisation arguably is at work. So they will be out of hours. So
Mm.
it's making sure that the leader does understand what are the needs and wants of the team, and how are you going to accommodate everyone. But it's that old thing, is sort of your to-do list is not my urgency.
Mm.
So making sure that there is a safe place to have some humorous conversations about how I'm better productive in the morning, etc., and settling down some of those protocols within the team.
Yeah, that's again really important, particularly with a new team. Yeah, and I'm maybe going to build on to that one. And I noticed when I got 5 minutes left, this is crazy. Always goes too fast, these panels. Like for me, to be honest, like today, I actually started in a new team, in a new role within Department of Defence, and yeah, I think like whilst there might be standard tools, how teams use the tools and understanding that's actually critical, I think, and how quickly you can make that to be productive in teams. And so just wondering about, creating those conditions of success so you are successful. What roles does, I think, training play in adopting the best use of tools and the best use, the way that the team works, I guess. What are your thoughts on, I guess, onboarding / training? I can answer sort of either of them, but yeah, we're down to 4 minutes left. It's crazy. Any quick comments on training or onboarding elements?
I'll jump in here. I think it's very critical and integral. How you start, in my opinion, is how you finish somewhat. And so even going to the standpoint of your day one, what does that look like? The partnership with IT to onboard a new employee from a technical perspective, and then having that conversation with the manager with these are the ways of working, these are the tools that we use, and setting those expectations.
Yep. Thanks, Nicole. Tracy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, totally agree. And all that training is a really good idea. I think it's probably just enough training, not too much training. And this is super relevant for security as well. Like one of the things our organization does is, I bet it's every other week or so, we have a 15-minute training on, hey, watch out for this or watch out for that or whatever. And it just keeps it top of mind. But I think the training demonstrates not just, hey, we want to develop your skills, but the training is also demonstrating, hey, we want you to have a good experience and we want you to have less friction and we want to support your work and your performance in whatever way we can. So I think training can send a really powerful message in addition to the content that it carries.
Yeah. And Alex, what are your thoughts?
Look, I think it's certainly setting the tone, but if you put onboarding as a really good example, that's the one opportunity that you get right off the bat where you can have that continuity of candidate to employee experience. And it is really important to sort of set the scene as soon as people start, because you do have, we've talked about all the benefits, but there are a lot of downside if people are not given boundaries. And in terms of and I'm not saying from a draconian organizational perspective, I'm talking about that sort of collaborative team experience of people, where you fall into people not engaging properly in teamwork, and that's catastrophic when it's and we want to talk about well-being. Having a member of your team that's not participating properly because no one told them the rules is really, and I mean rules in the way of how we all are going to operate really effectively, not necessarily a book. Is and it's not fair. So I think it's that providing that clarity straight up front is really, really important, alongside the technical use of tools.
Yeah. And Minnie, what have you got to add on this?
So I think training is really important, but as I was mentioning, it's also important to make the training engaging and also like rewarding. I mean, that has been really working a lot. I am working with a couple of platforms where they turn this into a gamification where people are just like, watching it, completing it, and getting rewarded. And even they can use those rewards towards like social impact projects, like, donating them to social causes. So people are just like, because the scarcity is with time, and people really want to put their time into good use. And so to be able to achieve the training and the adoption of these tools, it's really important that the training is also engaging, and that people are interested to be part of it. We also, with one of the companies, I created peer support groups. So it's like a peer study where everyone's just like helping each other and that they are working together. And we have like a leaderboard so that everyone is just like, completing the steps so that they are earning points, and that they created this kind of like a sweet competition where they are just like seeing, and also like created those groups so that people would work in groups, help each other, just like, document the learnings out of it. So we need to make the training really revolutionize the training, the way how we train people as well. That should be one thing that we should be thinking about.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of today's panel. So thank you, panelists, for what you've shared today. I think we've covered a lot of topics that remote tools are important, but I think we've covered that it's not the tools necessarily the most important. It's about how do we use them? How do we have that common way with a culture about how we use them, and the expectations of the best way to maximize the effectiveness for the organization, for the employees, and also being mindful of the impacts when people are working at different times, got different routines. How do we work as that group? So thank you, everyone, once again, and I look forward to our next panel. So bye, everyone, for today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a nice
Thank
day.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.